Let's face it, your motorhome, no matter what make or type it is, no matter how big or small, or how much you paid for it, is essentially a commercial vehicle, a van, or maybe a truck. Now, the suspension on commercial vehicles is designed to operate correctly, whether the vehicle is fully loaded or completely empty. But most motorhomes operate at almost a maximum weight capacity, and that means that the suspension isn't really set up correctly. Most motorhomes tend to run close to their maximum permitted weight, and that means that the suspension isn't working as efficiently as you might like. And that is why people fit air suspension. Now, there are two kinds of air suspension, semi and full. With semi-air suspension, you fit two bellows like this at the rear of the vehicle between the chassis and the axle. As you can see, they're completely flexible. Air's pumped in, the more air you put in, the stiffer the ride, and the higher the ride as well. And that's one of the big advantages of any kind of air suspension, including semi. You can actually adjust the height of the vehicle so that if you are fully laden, you make these bellows stiffer by putting in more air, there's less movement, and the ride is higher up. The bellows also prevent movement when you're going round corners, and in roundabouts in particular, I've noticed that they make a huge difference. Moving on to full air suspension, this gets a little bit more complicated and a lot more expensive, but for a lot of people, it's well worth the money. What happens with full air suspension is that the existing suspension on the vehicle is just taken off, chucked away and replaced by equipment like this, which gives you all the advantages of full air suspension. This is a bellows and it's connected to special shock absorbers. It's all a bit complicated, but you won't be fitting it yourself, so you don't really need to worry about that. The whole system is controlled by a piece of equipment like this. And with certain types, you even get a remote control, which gives you all the advantages of air suspension at the touch of a button. As with the semi-air suspension, you use one of these little 12-volt compressors which fits into the vehicle and is used to pump up the springs here, the bellows. What about installation? Can you fit it yourself? Well, as far as the semi-air suspension systems are concerned, yes, you can, if you're really good at mechanical work and you've got all the appropriate tools and equipment. It's not easy though, so be careful before you start on the job. For the full air suspension, no, you cannot fit it yourself. You're not actually allowed to, and if you did try to, you'd void all the warranties from the vehicle manufacturer and you get into terrible trouble if you had an accident. You really have to get this fitted by a specialist installer who can be recommended to you by the people that you buy the system from. What about the cost? Well, for a semi-air suspension system, you could get one fitted to, say, a Fiat Ducato for as little as around £550, £560. The full air suspension system is a completely different ballgame. If you have air suspension on all four corners of the vehicle, you can look at paying between £3,500 and £5,500. And if you have a tag axle vehicle, expect the cost to go up to around £8,000. It's a lot of money, but for many people, it's a very worthwhile investment.